Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has finished addressing the United Nations General Assembly in New York. He attacked Western governments who've recognised the Palestinian state, accusing them of terrorism against Jews and innocent people everywhere. He denied Israel was committing genocide in Gaza and addressed Israeli hostages held there directly, telling them Israel wouldn't rest until they had been brought home.
Please, order in the hall.
Well, as Benjamin Netanyahu took to the stage, dozens of people filed out of the auditorium there in New York, and some applauded.
This week, the leaders of France, Britain, Australia, Canada, and other countries unconditionally recognized a Palestinian state.
Well, that was Benjamin Netanyahu's address. It was broadcast live into Gaza on loudspeakers. Those are the pictures of that. Now, outside the United Nations in New York, protests have been taking place calling for sanctions on Israel. Well, over the next hour, we'll be analysing Benjamin Netanyahu's speech with our correspondents at the United Nations and elsewhere. But first, let's hear a little of what the Israeli Prime Minister had to say.
For much of the past 2 years, Israel has had to fight a seven-front war against barbarism, with many of your nations opposing us. Astoundingly, as we fight the terrorists who murdered many of your citizens, you are fighting us. You condemn us, you embargo us, and you wage political and legal warfare, it's called lawfare, against us. I say to the representatives of those nations, this is not an indictment of Israel. It's an indictment of you. It's an indictment of weak-kneed leaders who appease evil rather than support a nation whose brave soldiers guard you from the barbarians at the gate. They're already penetrating your gates.
Well, Mr. Netanyahu spoke for about 45 minutes. He also called out the UK, France, Australia and others for not showing support for Israel.
Yet over time, many world leaders buckled. They buckled under the pressure of a biased media, radical Islamist constituencies, and anti-Semitic mobs. There's a familiar saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Well, for many countries here, when the going got tough, you caved. And here's the shameful result of that collapse. For much of the past 2 years, Israel has had to fight a seven-front war against barbarism, with many of your nations opposing us. Astoundingly, as we fight the terrorists who murdered many of your citizens, you are fighting us. You condemn us, you embargo us, and you wage political and legal warfare, it's called lawfare, against us. I say to the representatives of those nations, this is not an indictment of Israel. It's an indictment of you.
Well, that was Benjamin Netanyahu. Will be live in New York in just a second. Just one more important line to bring you. It is only one line at the moment, but the Reuters news agency is reporting Donald Trump on Gaza, saying, I think we may have a deal. No other detail apart from that one line, but it's worth bringing to you in terms of the context of what we'll be analysing over the next hour or so. So let's go to our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucet, who's there at the United Nations. Lise, I'll come to that element in a moment or two, but that speech, give me your snapshot assessment first of all.
Matthew, I'm just digesting what you just reported about this breaking news line, just as everyone is reflecting on that hard-hitting, defiant speech by Prime Minister Netanyahu, taking on the growing momentum around the world, which has been reflected here all this last week at the world's top table, with the vast majority of countries, including more and more Western countries, recognizing the right of the Palestinians to have their own state, and calling for the war to end now, not after more military operations, as Prime Minister Netanyahu continues to push inside Israel. And then to have that statement by President Trump, that one line saying, I believe we have a deal. Now, President Trump would be referring to, there's been a buzz here, Matthew, among Arab leaders here, among Western diplomats, saying that they believe there's the best chance now that when Prime Minister Netanyahu goes to the White House on Monday, that President Trump will make it clear that the Israeli hostages should come home now and the war should end. Not end next month or next year, end now. So it's always hard to read into what President Trump has to say. Let me bring in our North America correspondent, Nada Taufik. Very interesting, Nada, because we already had President Trump making it clear there will be no annexation of the West Bank. Prime Minister Netanyahu didn't really address that in his speech, but he made it absolutely clear that even though he wanted the war to end, there would be no Palestinian state.
Yeah, and just looking back to what President Trump said in his address here, he didn't speak about Gaza that much, but he said very clearly, I still have to get a ceasefire, I want to get a ceasefire, and did focus his remarks on the hostages. We know that President Trump has felt, you know, under the American deals in the past, that's how hostages were released. We know he's been wanting to see that happen. So perhaps there is a breakthrough. We've heard the word breakthrough numerous times before, but as you say, Arab leaders here met with Steve Witkoff, President Trump's team, and did come out feeling a sense of renewed optimism. So perhaps we'll see something in the coming hours. And it is notable, as you say, given everyone's fears that Benjamin Netanyahu would come here and, as defiant as he was in that speech, be even more aggressive toward calling for annexation, something we know those in the far right of his party want to see happen. He didn't make that statement, and yet very clear that he is under no way possible going to agree to a future Palestinian state. And as you mentioned, I mean, just going against, absolutely defiant in the face of the international community's overwhelming calls to get a peace process started. To do that, because as European leaders are saying, the reason they decided to recognize Palestinian statehood is because if they don't do it now, there won't be a state to recognize.